I want to go to trade right away because you are a member of the Senate Commerce Committee. As you know, the White House is floating a deal in which we lift sanctions on China's ZTE so that China drops its retaliatory sanctions on tariffs, I should say, on U.S. agricultural products. The president has cited concern about Chinese jobs at ZTE. The FBI warns about giving China access to our U.S. telecom network. Your colleague, Senator Marco Rubio, has ripped the proposal as a giveaway to China. Do you share his concern that the president shouldn't be bending over backwards to help ZTE?
ZTE is almost the poster child for what is wrong with the engagement in trade with China, where they do break the rules. This is a company that was given a second chance. They continue to violate that, violated sanctions, sold product to North Korea and Iran, as far as we know, and they ought to be sanctioned. And we ought to be working with our other trading partners throughout the world to present a united front to make sure that China actually abides by the rules. But from my standpoint, I would like to consider China a 1.4 billion person market opportunity, living within the rules, so that we could both countries could benefit. Rather than have China win and we lose, I don't want to turn the tables and have us win, them lose. I'd much rather have us both win in free, fair, but reciprocal trade. And I think that's probably the best word that this president has used as it relates to trade is reciprocal treatment. Whether it's with Europe, whether it's within the TPP, whether it's with China, we should expect reciprocal treatment.
So, Senator, are you saying that you're concerned then that this ZTE situation actually is not facilitating a deal, or are you willing to see concessions given to ZTE if ultimately it provides a deal, a broader deal that takes out some of the asymmetry you're talking about in the trade relationship?
I've been very concerned and very vocal about the generalized tariffs on steel and aluminum because it increases Wisconsin and American manufacturers' costs and makes us less competitive. So I think it's counterproductive. The treatment with ZTE here, the back and forth, is just puzzling to me because, again, this is a specific problem that ZTE actually deserves sanctions against it, and we should enforce those sanctions. I'm very puzzled by the administration's approach to ZTE. I'd much rather have them, address steel in a more productive way that's not counterproductive, that increases costs to U.S. manufacturers, that, again, makes us less competitive globally and exacerbates our trade deficit. It just makes no sense to me what this administration is doing right now in terms of its trade policies.
Bringing in everything and making everything negotiable in some ways. Senator, I want to talk about Nafta as well, because we're now past the deadline for a new Nafta deal that, according to Speaker Paul Ryan, this Congress would be able to vote on. So if the president concludes that he can't get a better deal on Nafta and follows through on his threat to withdraw us from that agreement, would you support him in that case?
I would hate to see that. I think I would probably provide some kind of pushback on that. I'm not sure the president has unilateral authority to withdraw from Nafta. I think that's probably a disputable point. But the fact of the matter is, from my standpoint, in Wisconsin, we actually have a trade surplus with both Canada and Mexico. You go back to the mid-'80s when we first started negotiating Nafta, we've increased exports to Canada and Mexico by $321 billion per year. In today's dollars, our trade deficit has gone from 61 to 68 billion. In other words, only increased our trade deficit by 7 billion from the mid-'80s. So from my standpoint, the only giant sucking sound because of Nafta is exported products out of America into those two markets. I do not agree with the rhetoric that Nafta has been a terrible deal. I think it has benefited all three countries, which is exactly what you want out of trade deals. I'm happy to have a more advantageous NAFTA for America, great, but we have to get that deal negotiated and in place because right now the uncertainty caused by all this trade talk, all these trade negotiations is harming American agriculture and manufacturing. We have to conclude these trade deals to provide certainty, the kind of certainty that President Trump's policies toward stopping adding to the regulatory burden, our more competitive tax system. That's added certainty to the economy. All the trade turmoils is creating great uncertainty and really being counterproductive to the other good things President Trump has brought to our economy.
Senator, you're kind of painting a picture of these trade negotiations as being a big mess, quite frankly. Who do you think
looks that way to me?
Yeah, who do you think's messing this up? I mean, we seem to have someone who's in charge of the trade negotiations here in Bob Lighthizer that doesn't really seem to be up to the job. Would you agree with that?
Well, he certainly has a different viewpoint toward trade and how I would negotiate a deal successfully than I have. I mean, I'll certainly, admit that. So, again, there's no doubt about it that when it comes to China, they are the primary bad actors, and the president is right in concentrating on China. But in our relationship to China, our top priority is getting them to cooperate on North Korea so there's not some human catastrophe in case we have to take military action. We need them to enforce those sanctions. The best way to get China to behave on trade is with a united front, being part of TPP, engaging with the other world partners that in a united front would say, China, if you want to trade with any of us, you must abide by the rules, which they have not been abiding by.
Do you think the president understands all this, or he's too closely following campaign promises rather than actually what's best for America?
The president has a different negotiating style than I do, no doubt about it. Maybe this will all work out well. Maybe we'll get the absolute best possible deal. I hope we do. But what I'm saying is right now, farmers are losing contracts to our other global competitors in terms of contracts. American manufacturing, Wisconsin manufacturing is losing contracts. They're losing business, and we are creating such a level of uncertainty. It's harming our economic progress that had been made possible by President Trump's policies as it relates to he stopped adding to the regulatory burden and he made our tax system more competitive. So that brought great certainty. The trade discussions, the discussion, the lack of bringing those things to conclusion are creating a great deal of uncertainty, and it's counterproductive.
Senator, I'd like you to bring some certainty to a bill that you have introduced in the Senate. It is the Right to Try bill. And, of course, the House will be voting next week on it as well. What is your read in terms of how the House will line up on this?
Here I have to give President Trump a great deal of credit, and I truly appreciate his efforts. He brought this as a priority in the State of the Union address, and he's been working tirelessly. I can't tell you how many times I've heard privately and publicly that he's encouraged the House to bring up the only bill that has a chance of getting to his desk, and that's the Senate bill that passed unanimously. Now I'm very grateful to House leadership and Brian Fitzpatrick and Andy Biggs, who are the lead co-sponsors in the House. It sounds like they're going to bring the Senate bill to the floor. That should be on the president's desk, hopefully within the next couple of weeks, and we will have given terminal patients and their families a little bit of hope, a little bit more freedom, and that's a very good thing. But it would not have been possible without President Trump's leadership, and I can't thank him enough for that.